Thursday. Happy Thursday. How's it going? Happy New Year. Happy Thursday. Happy New Year. Happy January. How are you guys doing? How is everybody? All right. Hold on. Let's see. Why is my audio not coming in? I don't know. Anyways, just wanted to say, hey, wanted to chat a little bit about some traps in disguise, financial advice that sounds good but is actually a trap in disguise. And it's like everywhere. It's literally everything. But yeah, let's say hello. Avars, hello. How are you doing? Happy New Year to you. Luis, Mr. Camera Junkie is in the house. Hello. Hello, hello. Oh, great. You got the shirt. I'm glad it feels good. Avars, your shirt is coming as well. I hope, yeah, make sure you wear it loud and proud and share with everybody that Fix It in Camera is the way to go. That's right. So today is really about those traps in disguise. And I was watching Avar's stream the other day, and he talked about being an employee. And I commented on that. That is a trap in disguise as well. And I was already making the video that I made for this channel exclusively. So if you haven't checked it out, that I made the first exclusive video for this channel, full length video. So yeah, make sure you guys go check it out. And you know, if you guys are interested in that financial stuff that I kind of ramble about, this is where all that is going to be happening on this channel exclusively. So I'm going to remove all the other freelance financial videos from the previous channel or from the main channel and move them on over here, because I really like talking about freelance financials and the business of working for yourself and how to communicate with clients and how to charge properly and all those things. But YouTube does not like it when there's mixed content on a channel, and I've found that out. I tried to intermix it all together, but every time I do that, it's just those videos just don't get any traction. YouTube doesn't even push them out. Like maybe I'll get 1,000 or 2,000 impressions over a month, and like it just doesn't make any sense. Like YouTube is literally not showing that to anybody outside of, you know, the core group of people that have the notifications turned on. So all that stuff is moving over here. And today we're going to be doing the follow-up live stream to that discussion, which is traps in disguise. Financial advice that sounds good, but is actually a trap in disguise. And in the video, I did talk about a whole bunch of different things, specifically, you know, gear, investing in yourself, paying yourself first, doing all these different things that on the surface, they sound like really good, solid advice, but without understanding it really fully. And I've mentioned this many times before. If you take the 6 months to a year to really understand how to manage your finances, you're going to be so much better off than I was when I was starting out. And also so many people that just kind of jump into the creative portion of it without understanding the business portion of it. Like even in show business, they say it's show business, and it's almost 90% business. But yeah, I remember walking onto campus, onto university, and being excited and like seeing all these like massive buildings and the crowds of people that are there, and just being excited by just the whole, mostly older students, and me being the freshman walking in and really, you know, just taking in the sights and going to the first class and being in that, you know, large hall, and just the sheer, you know, the responsibility, the feeling that you get when you're at one of those places. And then you walk in to the lunchroom, and then row upon row, there's all these tables just filled with credit card companies and they're like, hey, you want a credit card? No problem. Here's a credit card for you. And, because you're already hopped up on all this excitement just for being at, university or college, and you're like, I can do this responsibility. I'm capable of this. Man, oh man, that first $3,000 got spent a little bit too quickly, and then you just end up paying the crazy amount of interest that happens beyond that. And so you get into this loop of having to get another credit card, line of credit, and it's just like, because when you're in university, most people don't work enough to be able to pay those kind of things. So, and that kind of cycle actually does continue afterwards. And in the video, I talked about how, like, even buying, you have the bare minimum of gear, and then you have all this new gear that keeps creeping up into your attention, and you want to get it because it feels like that's the thing that's going to make your life easier and your life better. But every time I know I bought a piece of gear, there was that excitement, that initial, really jazzed up to use it, but my skills didn't improve. So I don't want to talk about how, the gear specifically, but like loans and mortgages and paying yourself first, like all these things you have to really learn how to navigate and understand. And it does come down to really understanding what you want out of life, and what are those steps that you need to do to get to that. What is the thing that you actually want to chase that is going to be the most exciting, the most fulfilling thing that you want? Because I'm pretty sure that almost everybody that's here today, the thing that you're chasing isn't more gear. And it isn't, that new something item. It's not a thing. I'm pretty sure you're not chasing any kind of thing. It's about experiences. It's about, going on that trip that you always wanted to go on, spending time with friends and family, and having a really good time and enjoying your time with them, and them enjoying time with you. Because it ultimately, all those traps that you have to navigate that sound great, and you have to understand that anyone that's trying to sell you something, any financial institution that wants you to sign up for a loan, a mortgage, or a credit card or whatnot, they have their best interest in mind. They have their business that they're trying to grow. And every new customer that comes in, they know that they can sign up for these things, even if it's a loan for a piece of gear. And if you don't do those things correctly, and if you don't understand how to say no, if you don't understand how to say no to a lot of those things, then you can get stuck in that trap. Hold on, let's see if I can. Who is? Wow, yeah, there is. Okay, I'm gonna ban a few spammers. Sorry, guys. Whatever this is, stop it, because you're gonna get instant banned. Okay, so yep, I'm gonna ban a few people right now. Whatever that. Get out of here. Stop it. So 2 people gone. Anyways, how's it going? Hello. Happy Thursday. Glad you can make it. Something's different. What's different? What have you noticed? Oops. So you want to spend time with your wife without thinking about client work or having a client call me. That, to get to that point, you have to set that boundary. You have to, if you see a client calling you after a certain time and you choose that time, for me, it's 6 o'clock. There's only a handful of clients that I would be willing to pick up. Everyone else, that can happen tomorrow. There is no emergency. Unless we're literally on the delivery day and it's something that I messed up on, then I'll take care of it. Otherwise, I do make it a priority not to take any kind of calls after a certain amount of time or after a certain time. And it's a pattern that you establish. And once you set that boundary and you stick with it, clients immediately start to respect it. They know that they can send you an email, they can try calling, leaving you a voicemail, but it won't get taken care of until the next day. And that's a very powerful place to be. And it is a trap, because if you do open up that door and you say yes, and you allow yourself to be interrupted on your time, then the client will see that opening and will continue to do that moving forward. So you have to avoid that trap, and it does come down to you making that choice and understanding that you do have that power to get to that point. And I mean get to that point, because I know starting out there is no instant. You're making the kind of money that you want, and you're in the place and you're chasing the thing that you want. There are times where you have to build up your reel. There is times where having a good contact is worth the time. So how do you navigate that? How do you know what's actually worth it? And there are some very early on key conversations with clients that you should be able to recognize certain aspects right away. If a client is uncomfortable talking about money right away, that's a big red flag. If a client is always hounding you to book a time, but they're not flexible to a time that you're available, that's a red flag. If a client expects you to respond immediately, but then doesn't get back to you for days or weeks, another big red flag. These are all things that, like, don't waste your time, because you're gonna get stuck in that. It's another trap where it seems like a good client, they're gonna pay, but it just, everything gets delayed. Because there's no project where you're working 24 hours a day. So even if you're working on a project and you deliver something, the moment you deliver something, chances are you're not immediately working on something next for that client. You're waiting for that feedback, because if you do anything further, it may go against the feedback that you get. So that's why stacking multiple clients, you need to know how to be able to work on more than one project at a time without trapping yourself into too many projects at the same time. And all that comes from experience. There's no formula that I could give you that would be right for you. I know how many projects I could work on at one time, and how to space them out, and how to even know that when a project comes into your hands, onto your doorstep, there is a way to delay that project from starting, because you're already working on something. So if you can delay a project by a little bit of time, where it starts as another one is in the middle, and then when the other one gets to the middle, you're finishing up another one, and so forth and so on, and being able to schedule your time. Like, there are ways to navigate all these traps, especially the financial traps, like credit cards and putting money away. I did talk about how what it means to actually pay yourself first. And paying yourself first means when money comes in, you put money away into your investment account, into your savings account, the one that you don't touch. You essentially can't touch it. Then you put another big chunk into your taxes, because you just have to take care of that. Otherwise, you're going to get to the end of the year and you're not going to have anything there. Then you do your expenses, and you do all the monthly stuff that you need to take care of: food, rent, housing, car, whatever. And then anything that's left over goes into your fun account. So if you have anything left over after that, your fun account, that's where you can put money towards a new camera. That's where you can put money towards that vacation, that the night out, the big expenditures that you want to do. And if you get into that habit, a magical thing happens. You allow yourself to be relaxed, because you're not worried about where that next paycheck is going to be coming from, because you have a emergency fund, a reserve fund, an investment. And even if you start with $10 as your first year goal, to just be able to put $10 into that, it sounds like nothing, but starting that habit is so powerful. it the only way to describe it is that you get to a point where you're just relaxed when the work day is kind of done. And you're like, I'm just gonna enjoy the rest of the night instead of going like, oh, where's that next client gonna come from? Where's that, like what if that next project doesn't come through? And it's a mental trap more than anything, that having that money put away, because it's still your money. It's not going anywhere. You didn't spend it on something. It's just there for when you need it later. And I also talked about how there's a lot of people that when they need to access like a big chunk of money that their emergency fund wasn't able to cover, they're so afraid to use the money that they put away. Like the whole purpose for putting that money away is to use it when you need it in those really important moments in your life. So it's not some far off retirement time in the future that is the only time you can use it. Like there's been a couple times where I had to clear out my investment account because I needed the funds. I needed to take care of some really important things. And it was just doubling down and trying to put that money back in and rebuilding it. And sometimes that's just the reality. I had to do it. I didn't want to do it, but I knew that if I didn't do it, then I'd have to find a way to borrow that money in a way that wasn't necessarily the best for, it would have been even worse if I had tried to borrow that money instead of just using the money I had, because two important things happen where I didn't have to pay that back immediately. There's no interest to pay that back. If I borrowed it from other means, I would have had to pay it back quickly with interest. Where it's this, I can put in a little bit, or I can put a lot, or I can do whatever I want to start rebuilding that. And it's not even about momentum. The sooner you can start doing these things, that's the important thing. Because if you can start doing that kind of stuff sooner, that's when you can just pull 10% out, and that will cover that emergency that happens. Hold on, let's see what you guys are saying. Roger, how's it going? Happy Thursday. What lens? Yeah, I noticed that too. There is a lot of focus breathing on this lens. This is the 24mm G Master Sony, and I noticed that it does that a lot. So if you guys have any advice on how to adjust that, because that's driving me nuts. And it really it's when I do like even subtle movements. Maybe it's a setting where I should just slow it down so it doesn't go so fast. Maybe that's it. That's right. Hold on. Had to add a night bot to fight the spammers. Those are just bots. Okay, well, they've been banned either way. So, yes, I can't help myself if I move back. Yeah, there it is. Apparently the A7 IV has a feature to resolve that. But yeah, it's really noticeable. I noticed it in my latest video that I recorded with. Yeah, I do the same thing on my main channel. Every time I do a live stream, I tend to unlist them about a week later. Ooh, Canon fanboy alert. But I like the Canon stream. Interesting. Well, I like that I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with this new setup, because it's a 24mm lens. I like the shallow depth of field. The color, I don't know. I'm still toying with it. I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, let me know if you guys notice any other things, because I have noticed immediate differences that drive me a little bit bonkers. There are things I like, and then there are things that I really dislike. Lens breathing is definitely one of them. I need to figure that out, how to achieve that. I want to avoid that trap. There so many times I get excited and am just blind. I'm looking at the red flags and it looks burgundy from where I'm. Yeah, there are so many times where that's why I'm saying there's sound. It sounds good, and you have to ask where the source of the information is coming from. Because if a financial institution is telling you all the benefits of signing up with them, then you have to understand that their benefits are for them. That there isn't really a win. Like if you're buying a house, say, and you have two options: pay it off fully or take a mortgage. And if you have then enough money to pay off, I know this is an extreme example. If you have enough money to pay it off, it doesn't make sense to pay it off, because the money that the difference that you would be able to use to pay it off, you can invest that and earn more money over the length of the mortgage than you would by paying it off sooner. But that's just one example. There are many examples where getting a credit card, it sounds like a good idea, but then you look at the 20% interest rate and you're doomed. It's an instant fail right at that point if you're not able to pay it off every month. Because that 20% turns out to be, like, say it's $10,000, that turns out to be almost like $2,000 or like $1,500 for the year to just use that credit card if it's not paid off. Because a lot of people, they bump it up and they slowly start paying it off. And it's like, instead of borrowing $10,000, now you've borrowed $30,000 by the time you've paid it off. It just makes no sense. Like, it's like I get to get the thing that I want, and then you're trapped trying to pay it off. And the more your life starts to cost you every month, the deeper in that trap you become. So wherever you are in that journey right now, if you're maxed out, if you're in the middle or completely clear, take steps to add to the exit strategy from being in that. And I know people talk about being debt free, and there's a whole conversation I had when I was in my 20s where people are saying, like, don't spend, definitely live below your means. Whatever income you're spending, make sure that it's your expenses are no more than half of what you make. And when you're starting out, just getting rent on your own is almost 90% of the income that you're making when you're starting out. So, like, I always had this thought, like, what planet are these jokers living? Like, I literally was like, these guys make no sense. Like, they have no idea what we're trying to achieve here, or like just trying to get by month to month. Like, food plus living expenses, and if you had a car, like, that's it. That's you spent all your money, and to buy an equipment, like, forget it. Like, you had to borrow. So as artists, we get into that cycle where we put the money down and we're like, we will pay this off by the future money. And if you think about it, you're setting yourself up for that trap. Because what happens, and I talk about this a lot, where lifestyle creep is so powerful, because then you get another job and it pays you more, and you're like, fantastic. Now I can pay off all that stuff that I borrowed on. Who does that? Who did that? I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I was like, I'm going to buy that light. I'm going to buy this thing. I'm going to do. And, I put $500 extra onto the credit card. And it's just like, Jesus, like, wow. It's lifestyle creep is an endless loop where it's like, you make a little more, so you spend a little more on yourself. And then you have to make more because of the more that you're spending on yourself. And it's just this loop, and it's just craziness. It's craziness. And the financial institutions want you to be in that loop because you're the best customer when you're doing that kind of stuff. Because it's like, yeah, you get to play with the new toys, but it doesn't work out the best for you, because then you have to start selling the things that you actually need. Anyways. Yes, focus breathing. Okay. Jeez, no, I'm going back. The cap is overexposed. Let's see. Can I bring this down? No. Can I do some stuff here? Probably. Oh, it's not letting me do anything now. Great. Fantastic. Anyways, not much I can do at this moment. Boop. That's better. Yeah, I'm using the FX3, the A7 IV, and I'm using S-Log 3. So I've been talking with a lot with Josh Satin. He helped me kind of navigate the whole Sony world because he was using both Canon C70 and the FX3s. And he was using them together. So those are the two cameras I was really talking about and excited about. Yeah, I do feel white cap. For some reason I don't have my memory down onto how to instantly change the settings for some reason. No. Okay. Anyways. So, how about you guys? What things have you done? What traps have you gotten yourself into that on the surface seemed like great ideas? Like initially, oh yeah, here we go. Oh, too much. On the surface, what's something that on the surface it sounded like a good idea and you convince yourself that it's going to work out and you have that plan and you're going to do it, but then you didn't stick with it. You didn't stick with it. Because I have many examples in my own head where I convince myself of something that I'm going to do and then I don't follow through on it. But every time I did follow through on a plan, even if it's a long-term plan, the numbers work out. Because I did get to a point where I do trust the numbers. Because if you can kind of figure out the math beforehand, whatever it is for you, and it does work out on paper without kidding yourself, like, can you actually make it work? There was a whole other thing where I worked out how much it was going to cost me to buy something plus all the rental stuff of something over an 8-year period. And then I was like, well, what if I just bought up and I didn't have to rent all this other stuff and I was able to do that over the course of several years? Would it actually work out? And it would be a much bigger cost up front, but after I passed the 5-year mark, it would be money in my pocket if I continue using that same piece of gear. And initially it was tough. And why is my focus not working right now? I don't know, guys. There we go. There you go. Okay, figure it out. I'm gonna figure this camera out. Overall, I like the camera, and I explained in my live stream before the new year why I got this camera specifically. Is because I wanted a cinema grade camera that was much smaller than this guy right here. I wanted to be able to do handheld stuff or gimbal stuff with the same kind of quality, and even have 16-bit video, because this one can do 16-bit video. I didn't realize how much audio I was missing out on, the quality of audio, because this only does 16-bit audio, where the Sony FX3 does 24-bit audio. And there's a huge difference. And I noticed it almost immediately with the exact same mic, with the exact same setup, with the exact everything, the distance from the mic, everything, the same room. The quality of the audio just popped way better. I'm like, this is sounding better almost instantly out of the camera without me having to do too much to it. That was one of the biggest things that shocked me on loving about this camera here, where it's the audio quality, and audio I always say is like 50% of a great video. So yeah, here we are. So Mac is saying that he's guilty of buying the equipment I might need in the future as soon as some money from client work piles up. It's so tempting. Like right now, I want to buy the new MacBook Pro, and I was going to buy it, and it's like it's a nice to have. Like it's something that I want, but the more I'm being delayed from buying it, not only because I'm choosing to, I'm being forced to not buy it yet, because the one that I want is 6 to 8 weeks out. But the longer I'm not buying it, the more I'm enjoying that the money is there. And I'm actually now pushing my expectations out even further, where it's like, well, at this point, it's only a month and a half away. I'm going to wait until March. Like if I ordered today, if I spent that $5,000 on that maxed out MacBook Pro, I know I would use it, but it would arrive just as the next one is coming. So one trick that I use in my head when I want to buy gear, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to wait for the next version to come out because it's coming out soon. And I keep telling myself that. And I told myself with the Mac Pro, for almost 8 years, I held on to that computer because of the next one that was going to come out, that I didn't want to buy the trash can at the time. And I just kept holding out. And the work I was still able to do, and then I rented render farms when I needed it, and so the cost. So I was able to keep that money, but still be able to do the work. And I did the same thing with cameras. Like I try not to buy the very first iteration of something or the moment that it's announced, because I know that I'm just excited about the gear just like everyone else is. But I know that if I buy it right then and there, I'm just buying it because of FOMO or because of some other weird reason that it's just like the psychology that is being used by marketers and brand specialists and these companies. Like there's a reason that they choose specific influencers, because they want to influence you to open up your wallet and spend your money on their, I want to say product, but it's their junk. Ultimately, it's just like, do you really need that crap? Like if you have a really good camera that you bought in the last 3 years, you don't need a new camera. Like if your camera is, 5 years old at this point, maybe, but do you need 4K? Are you shooting everything in 4K? Do you need image stabilization because you do a lot of handheld? Like you have to really ask yourself, do I need this piece of gear? Because if you don't, and it's just a want and a nice to have, then you're just spending the money. It's not. What would make you more happy? Ask yourself this. What would make you more happy? Clearing your accounts, like having no debt, or having that new camera? I know the answer I choose. I'd want to have no debt. 0. That would make me more relaxed. I know that every time there is a good, like at the beginning of 2020, like literally January 2020, everything was lined up. I had nice big cushion of savings, had work lined up throughout 2020. The year was going to be a banger. It was the best year looking forward. And then the funniest thing happened. And all that work went away. All the savings that I had built up for that year, I had to use. I had to dip into that just to get through that year, because a lot of the work that I had was for large events that were months of work worth that just went literally away overnight. The whole year was gone. And then trying to find other work on top of that was just like, it was a nightmare. So I had to live off of money that was saved up. So anyways, so ask yourself, Do you need that new piece of gear, or would you rather put $1,000 to pay down a debt that you incurred because you bought something before you're able to pay for it? Well, pay for it. It's time to pay up. The piper is calling. Time to make good on your debts. Because there's always, well, the next job I'll do that. The next job I'll do that. And there are times where you do literally need that piece of gear. Fine. Good. Get it, because then it's going to make you more money. But if you're buying gear that's not making you money, then you're trapping yourself. And it's a YouTube is the only place. YouTube is the only place where I would recommend buying all the gear that you need up front to get started, or buying the bare minimum, like the camera, the lights, the computer, and the knickknacks to like the microphone or whatnot. Because that's the only place where you're literally using it every single day. And if you're committing to a YouTube channel, get that stuff, because it'll be cheaper than trying to rent and do these weird and, buy a cheap one and then you buy a more expensive. It's just like, just buy what you need, get it over with, rip the Band-Aid off, but then you have to commit to it. And it's that long-term thinking that is the difference between being trapped in something and actually having it be that financial sound advice. Because if you convince yourself and you don't follow through on it, then you're just trapping yourself. Then you might as well sell that stuff. So you have to be able to then let go of it at a loss if you're not using it. So like there's this whole balance. Like it's a whole navigation. It's a maze. It's amazing. Absolutely. Anyways. So one of the things that I like about the Sony lenses is that it brings back the aperture ring. And I don't know, there's something about the physical ring that I just love having access to. It brings me back to my film days where everything was manual. And so this is an autofocus lens, but it has that manual aperture ring. And I for some reason, it just, that little thing brought me joy, where I missed that on the Canon lenses, even the RF lenses. It's like, I know that you can set it, but this one allows you to have clicked or declicked, and so it's a nice touch. It's one of those filmic video centric features that I just think it's a nice touch. So Bailey saying, was going to be a long-term gear rental to figure out if I would utilize the gear and I could pay for it and everything. But it will cost me more to rent over 6 months than buy. Yes. And there are a lot of productions, like film productions or video productions, that will get a long-term client that's 6 months or a year. They'll buy the gear or they'll lease it, and at the end of the project, they'll turn around and sell it. So the rental becomes much, much cheaper, because year-old equipment can sell for 90% of its value. So the rental becomes 10%. So if it's like $10,000 worth of gear, it's $1,000 rental, essentially, for the duration. So there are ways to navigate that whole spectrum. So I didn't end up renting it and waited a few extra months, got enough money to pay for it outright, and then bought it and have been loving it ever since. Like that's a great way to do it. And if it's project specific and you're done using that piece of gear because like you said, you didn't know if you'd utilize it, then sell it afterwards. Like there are many times, like YouTube is the only place where it's like whatever gear most people buy, they end up using it, like mics and all that kind of gear, especially when you're trying to find the one that works best for you, because we can't all buy the most expensive microphone that will sound the best for your voice. It's a really hard thing to find, especially if you don't have the ear for it or without testing it. So there are moments where, maybe renting a whole bunch of different things and then trying it out for a weekend and see which one resonates with you the best, and then you get that one. Roger saying, I've bought way too much gear than what I needed, but hey, I like gear and new gadgets are always fun. I agree with you. New gear and gadgets are immensely fun. But I got myself into that same routine, especially early on. Like when I started my YouTube channel, I already had the gear that I knew I needed to do the channel. And there are some things that I bought specifically for the channel. I think I bought a few lenses a little bit wider because I bought some autofocus lenses because a lot of them were manual focus. And I didn't want to rely on like me just sitting in one spot and not being able to get it. But I was more than glad to sell gear that I didn't actually end up using, which is okay. Sell the gear that you don't use, like unless there's really, really sentimental value, like that's the first camera I ever owned, fine. But know that that's a, several $1,000 paperweight that's sitting there that you may not ever use again, and the value just keeps decreasing. Like I sold my 1DX, I sold a bunch of lenses, I sold my 5D Mark II, sold the Nikon, sold so many camera bodies that I owned, even for a short time. I think the longest I had was the 5D Mark II, but then as soon as I got the 1DX, I was like, I'm just gonna let the 5D Mark II go because someone else could use it. I had it for about 8 years, and it was great. So, let's see. Yeah, gear acquisition syndrome. And it does. It hits hard because, again, there has to be a point where, like, unless you're buying it outright, those things end up on lines of credit or credit cards or wherever. You have to pay that off because otherwise, even if you bought it on a credit card and you're just making the minimum payments and then you sold it a couple of years later, all that money that you sold probably wouldn't be able to cover the amount of money that you still owe on the gear. So that's a trap you definitely have to avoid. Just avoid it as hard as you can. Had a podcast with someone who doesn't understand podcasts and equipment. I bought everything, camera, mics, etc. I mapped it out that I can turn a profit. And we didn't. It's hard. It's hard to forecast what something will cost over the long run. And I talked about this in the video as well. If you can find a project, like for me, the FX3 is linked to a project. The camera is already paid for itself because of the project that I'm working on. I made sure that when I chose to buy a new camera that it was going to be linked to a project. And it's always the way I kind of roll with it. Like there's a project coming up potentially for me where I can link a whole new a whole new computer rig that's going to be much more beefier than I would have spent on my own because I just want something that is a little bit faster than what I'm currently using. If you can link it to multiple projects where ongoing projects or a client that may come back year after year, those are the anchors that you should be using to escape your own trap that we dig ourselves into. Because we are the ones making that final decision. No one's forcing us into these traps. We're trapping ourselves by making our lifestyles cost more. Now, there's no problem with having your lifestyle cost more as long as you're able to supplement it with work that comes in. So another big part of these traps in disguise is knowing how to dig yourself out of them. And earning more becomes very important. Like, I know that for me, because I'm not an employee, I have my own business, that I can just take on another client, another job, another project. Whereas I was working for someone, my income is fixed. And then outside of that, then I'd have to work just as hard to be able to make more on top of it. Because asking for a raise, most companies, and this is why working for other people, if you can find a way to get out of that and start working for yourself, whatever business you want to create, find a way to do that, because being your own boss is so much more freeing. Gil, I think you mentioned where you were able to sit down and watch a movie at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Like, that's a freedom that does not exist when you're an employee working 9 to 5. Like, literally, if you have to go to an office, like, that's not something that you can just be like, I'm gonna go home and watch a movie with my wife, or go to the movie theater in the middle of the day, because it's like, oh, well, then I'll work later. It's like, those are freedoms that, like, that's a trap that, like, I tried it. I tried doing the whole corporate aspect of it and going down that route, and I was miserable. The work was great, but I was miserable. And because it took so much time away, like, time sucks are huge traps to avoid, because time is literally the only thing that you can't save. You can't bank it, you can't store it, you can't, save it for later. All you can do is spend your time, and you can choose to spend it wisely or foolishly. And when I started thinking of it that way, it really became clear. It's like, okay, then I'm going to spend my time the way I want to do it. And all of this takes time. There's no tomorrow you wake up and you're already in that phase. Like, it took me years to set up a working from home environment where clients just trust me, because I built trust from one client to the next, to the next, to the next. And initially, it was about charging a little bit less just to have the freedom to work from home. And people chose to work with me. So I'm not saying that's the right way I should have done it. Probably not. I probably should have just been more confident, because if you are confident in you, then others will have confidence in you. It's this weird thing where if you speak confidently and you can communicate in a way that resonates with the people that you're talking to, and you build confidence in them for you, they'll be willing to pay for that. But you also have to follow through on that, because then you can build a return clients, and you can get those 5 clients that pay for 80% of your yearly expenses or your income. And it's this whole cycle that just really, really kind of repeats itself. So at least now you have gear for client work. So it will turn a profit if you stick with it for the long term. So don't go upgrading that gear because you've made a little bit of money. Pay for that first, or buy new gear, sell the old gear, and do the recycling. Like, especially with computers, you're able to, if you buy a computer for 4 years and it costs $4,000 or $5,000, that works out to about $100 a month rental at the end of the 4 or 5 years. But then you can trade that back in for at least $1,000 to $2,000, which then makes it like a $60 a month rental over that same amount of time. So don't be afraid to sell older gear or trade it in, even if you think it's like for a loss. If you want to go through the hassle of trying to sell it privately through eBay, just know that eBay will charge you 10% to sell higher ticket items. So any profit that you think you would have made gets lost. So unless you can sell it locally to someone you can hand it to without any transaction fees. And it's just, again, more traps where it's like, oh, I'm going to sell it on eBay for more money. And then, like, eBay is charging you $400 to sell a $4,000 item. And you're like, well, okay, I might as well just traded it in. I would have made the same amount of money. I'm still happy keeping the EOS R and looking forward to the EOS R5C, I think is the one you're talking about. Yeah, I'm curious to see what's going to come from that. For me, the A7, or sorry, the FX3 was the camera that I wanted to get because I wanted to get a camera. And I'm gonna make a whole video about this once I used it for a couple months. I wanted to get a camera that had features and capabilities that my current cameras didn't have. So I didn't want to just get a camera that could do what the C200 did, but just a little bit better. I also wanted something that was smaller, but able to film at the same quality as this camera, but also wanted 4K autofocus and 120 frames a second with autofocus, also 240 frames in HD, and it didn't overheat because it had the body to go with it. So it had all those things that all the other cameras that I had access to didn't actually have. So I really, really thought about it. And ultimately, if I'm going onto a shoot, I'm going to do something that it requires multiple cameras. I'll probably still use the C200. I'll rent a C300 or C500 or a C70, and I'll use this one as the B-roll camera. That way, it's not about trying to match the two camera angles in post, but it'll allow me to do things that those other cameras wouldn't allow me to do. So that was really my thinking. And I wanted something that, for the project that I was working on, I needed to have access to this camera because this is the camera that makes the most sense for the quality and the fact that it's able to, it has a fan built into it at that small size. And it's full frame. But lens breathing, that's an interesting thing. To be honest, the Sony A7S, sorry, the A7 IV, I'm not interested in it at all. Like, it looks nice, but again, we're going back to the crop 4K. It's just like, no, just that's the whole reason I don't like using the EOS R, because the crop in 4K, it just got annoying. It just got annoying. So for me, cameras and stuff related to that are hobby with some income now and then. My main job that pays for everything else. Yeah, it's okay to have an expensive hobby. Like for me, my expensive hobby is music, like drums, guitar, all those things. They made me, I think, a total of maybe a couple $1,000 in my lifetime. But I'll gladly spend on, a beautiful drum set because that's just for me, and I love it. Like that's my expensive hobby that I don't think I'll ever let go. I just love having that. For cameras are definitely a hobby, but they also are my full-time thing. So it's much easier for me to justify spending, but I've gone through the hoops of learning when to spend. I wanted to buy a red camera. I had this huge urge. Like my friend, he was one of the first people in Canada to have the Red 1 camera. And it was fantastic. I wanted to get one so we can have two. We can just had this whole plan. But, he was having a hard time renting out his own camera because the bigger productions didn't want to rent a new camera that was so brand new. And then it got to a point where they released the new camera bodies, but then the market was so flooded with camera operators that were renting their cameras but not their time, and then it's this weird thing. So I never ended up buying a red camera because it was just like, it made no financial sense. It made no sense whatsoever. I've used the red camera on many shoots, and I just rented the camera, or I hired people that had the camera, so I'll still be able to work with it. It just wasn't for me. I'm not that high caliber when it comes to camera work. I'll hire people that are much better than me that can help execute the vision that I have. So the camera I had before buying this new one was an 11-year-old camera, okay, mainly for photography, but even then, night photography was impossible. Sport photography wasn't too bad, but it was difficult. Yeah, night photography, that's another reason I wanted the FX3, because it's the same sensor as the A7S. So it's a full-size sensor, but it's a 1-to-1 sensor, meaning that one pixel is 1 pixel on the sensor that is in the image. So it's a 12 megapixel sensor. So those larger photo sites allow for more light to get in, making cleaner images with the addition of the the noise reduction that they have built into the camera. And there's definitely a noticeable quality improvement once you get to 12,800 ISO. Like something switches in the camera where before that it's actually getting really, really noisy in like the 6400, kind of in that range. And then once you get to 12,800, something pops and it becomes super clear again. So the ISO definitely higher made this a winner overall, because there have been many times where I'm shooting on location where the light isn't enough to capture what I need. And so this will be that camera that I'll have with me that'll be able to capture those kind of moments. And it's better to get the shot than to not. So even if there's a grainy shot, I would still get it. But with this one, I have a better chance of getting a clean shot that will have a better chance of getting into the show. Yeah, no debt. That is what we should always strive for. The EOS R5C should be very interesting. I'm curious. I'm curious to see if Canon is actually going to do a one-to-one sensor with that and kind of play in the realm of the A7S III or the FX3. Are they going to add cinema feature kind of qualities to it to combat with the FX3? Because literally a Canon diehard super fan is now sitting with an FX3 camera. Think about that for a second. Think about how much of a sway that this camera had to pull me over to the dark side. Depending on which side you're on, Canon, Sony. But I found that very interesting, where it's like, after looking at all the things that my requirements, all the things that I wanted to get things that these other cameras couldn't do and that those other cameras couldn't provide. Low light, full frame, image stabilization. It doesn't have an ND filter built in, so that's a knock for it, but easily solved, screw on. I didn't like that I'll have to buy new lenses moving forward, because I did try the adapter, and there's for photography it's okay, but when we go into video, it's always you hear it really struggling. And I have the latest Metabone, so it's not that. So yeah, I'm gonna do a little bit more testing, but yeah, I'm gonna do a follow-up video eventually. Talking about not buying more gear than we need, and here we are geeking out about gear. We can geek out all we want, and that's the whole point. We don't need to buy all the gear. This camera that I'm talking about here is a year old or more at this point. I could have been like, oh, I'm just gonna get the A7 IV. But no interest in it, because it doesn't serve the purpose that I need. It's just the latest in whatever is available. It doesn't cost anything to geek out about gear. It literally costs nothing. There's a saying that when you're writing a script, it doesn't cost anything to write it down. And they actually encourage, as a writer, to write as big and as bolsterous as you can, and then you can pare it down, because it's a lot easier to scale things back than it is to try to make them bigger later. And it doesn't cost anything to write an idea down, and it doesn't cost anything to geek out about this kind of gear, because I get excited about this stuff too. I just don't pull the trigger and buy it when it's instantly announced, because I know that I can get sucked into the hype train just as well as anyone else. I'd rather have my debts paid off for the stuff that I already bought before I start buying into the new things. And if you can, find a way if you can, like with this camera, I leased it. I didn't buy it outright because that's like that's money that that I could use for a lot of other things. But I knew that I had work coming in that would cover the payments on those things on this thing. Like this thing's already paid for itself, and but there's still a few more months left on the payments. But the only reason I agreed to doing the leasing on these is because they offered 0% financing, meaning that it's a 1-for-1 at the end of the term. If it was anything other than that, like Apple, I looked into leasing with Apple, and they were doing 14% interest on leasing through their business division. I was like, forget it. That makes no sense. I'd rather put it on my line of credit, which is 6%, and save the difference. Like, it just makes no sense buying it through them when they're charging so much. And because there's such high demand, they can charge whatever they want. But again, it didn't make any sense. So there are ways. So I didn't spend the whole money. Like, that's going back to the mortgage analogy that I made early on, where if you're able to make more money by not putting it all in, then it can make sense. But again, if I bought it because I knew I had work coming in that would pay. Like, for me, I rent my, like, I don't rent this by itself. It's either it comes with me or it doesn't. Like, there's no other user for this than me when I'm on set. But I do charge companies a price for every time that shows up on set with me and it gets turned on. And doing that 1-2 days can pay for almost 6 months worth of lease payments on this thing. So if I can do 1 month a day, that covers 2-3 months, just like that, just for it being on set. So if you're able to do those kind of things, that's the way to pay for the things that you're saying you're going to pay for yourself moving forward. A lot of bots. Sheesh. Anyways. So, do you believe in having business cards on your person at all times? So, no. I don't believe in having cards. And I'm not saying that cards are bad. Find a way to get one of those digital cards. The one that links, that has an NFC reader on it that taps onto phones. I still have the original pack of cards I got printed for me. I got 1,000 printed. I think maybe over the last 15 years, I've given out 100 maybe. And I think I've thrown away more because they just got mangled in my wallet or in my bag. And like, I don't like giving out cards that are not pristine. Like, if the edges are crumpled, it's like, no, that's just a bad mojo. So get one of those plastic ones or the metal ones, which has the NFT reader, and you literally, you tap it onto the back of like someone's card or phone, and then it takes them to a site, and then it allows them to see your contact info. It takes them to your website. There should be a button on that link that then allows them to automatically add your contact to their phone. Because almost everybody that is going to be worth giving a card to will have a phone with an NFC reader capability on it. And if they don't have that, and you whip that out and you kind of say like, oh, this is my card, and they're like, oh, cool. Like, it's just it's a different way than giving them a card, what happens to them? There's only one culture on earth, I think the Japanese culture, I'm not sure if it's Japanese, but there's a way to present the card, and they accept the card, and then they spend time actually reading it. Then they put the card down in front of them, and it's this whole nice way to show respect to being handed that kind of information. But majority of North Americans go like, oh, thanks, and they put it in their pocket, and it just gets lost. And they, a couple months later, or even the next year, they put on that same jacket. They're like, oh, shoot. And then they chuck it. So if you're able to do that kind of card where you're able to put them into your contacts, that's a nice way to do that. But it's always better to get someone else's information and then a day later reach out to them and say, hey, it was nice meeting you. Well, this is a big one. Okay, so big bonus freelancing tip. When you meet somebody, regardless of if you want or need something from them in the future, it doesn't matter. When you get their contact information, email them the next day saying, hey, it was great meeting you the other day. I just wanted to say hi. You know, if you ever need these kind of services, you know, definitely think about us. And just let them know that you've reached out and you enjoyed meeting them. That simple act over the years has gotten me more follow-up calls than me handing someone a card and waiting for them to call me back. Reaching out to them, and it's usually one day later. Like, do it 24 hours. Try to keep it as quickly as possible and just reach out and say, hey, it was really nice meeting you. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Like, even something as that. Don't even mention your services. But if you have all your contacts information in your email, it's a great way for them to be like, who is this again? They'll click on the link and just you take them down that rabbit hole to get them to know you better. Because that's what it's all about. Once someone has seen that you're able to, you're confident in communicating and reaching out, and they've seen your work, if they reach out to you, at that point, it's just about seeing if you guys fit to work together. So you've already won the job. You just have to win them over that you're the right person for that job. Anyways. So, I'm a little bit behind on the comments, but yeah. So texting also works well. I like doing the email because it allows for you to have your whole signature allows for the whole signature to be in the email, which then links them to all these things. And it's up to them if they want to choose, but it gives them that option. Texting is a good way to do it, but it's some people don't want to give out their phone number per se, but everybody has an email. So asking for someone's email is a lot easier than asking for someone's contact information where they're like, oh, who's this? Why are they going to be calling me? So it's one of those tips. So Michael, hello, happy Thursday, by the way. Lise, why have I never looked into this? My stream is still set up with the Sony A7 Mil. I'm not sure what the A7 Mil is. So there's two ways to go about it. I reached out to Sony directly because in their cinema line and the FX3, A7S Mark II, that camera drove me nuts, and it was one of my biggest reasons I didn't want the A7S III or the FX3. So this was my biggest hindrance. But yeah, anyways, it was more user error than anything else. So yeah, with Sony and their cinema lines, or even Canon, reach out to their pro divisions because they usually have salespeople that will be able to get you a better deal on that gear. And that's where you'll be able to find the 0% financing. That's where you'll be able to have those kind of conversations. Because if you go through a retailer, they're just going to sell you the product at, whatever their markup is. So there are ways to do it in the pro line. So if you're looking at any kind of pro gear that's a little bit higher than the standard consumer grade products, there are salespeople that are directly linked in that. So you can find that in your location. You can have a better conversation, and they'll be able to point you to the best places to buy this kind of stuff from. Anyways. Going back to Avar's comment, poor man sells time, rich one is buying it. Yes, absolutely. That's who said that quote? But that's what it comes down to. Where if you find a way to, this is a trap to be able to, if to avoid selling your time, because you only have 24 hours a day, just like every other person. So if you think about it, rich people that are making way more money, they don't need to sell as much time, but they utilize their time very well to maximize how much they can make. So they'll actually, really, really wealthy people will hire people to take care of the smallest things that just eat up time, like taking out the garbage, cleaning their house, paying their bills. They'll get their accountant to pay their bills. Like, it just becomes like they don't want to deal with any of that. I remember, because I used to work with Tony Robbins and his whole his whole tours that he did before the pandemic. And a lot of the speakers he had there were really, really wealthy people, and they're like, I don't remember the last time I saw a physical bill or handled a bill or even took care of a bill. And that's where we need to get to, where we don't want to be the more time you spend trying to dig yourself out of the thing that you've put yourself into, the more it's going to take the more you're going to take away from the experiences that you want. Like, if you have to work all day, like trying to find time to go to the gym, trying to find time to just relax and have fun, and like actually relax, where instead of being stressed. So anyways, so just dropped in. Sorry I missed the start. Probably already answered, but what camera are you streaming with? I'm using the FX3 right now. And I've only had this camera for about 2 weeks or so. So I'm still really learning the ropes with it. And I have not added it to my description. Well, I'm not sold on it yet. It's a great camera. I just need to learn how to use it. So it's not something that I'm recommending just yet. It's just what I'm using. Doesn't mean that anyone else needs to use it. So keeping the MacBook Pro 16-inch i9 for the next few years. I think that's a great call, unless you want to jump into the M1 architecture, which I think it is a great place to go. See what your trade-in would be for that. Like, just go onto the Apple website. They have a link, and they'll let you know almost instantly what your trade-in for that is. So if you've already had it for a year or two, you know, that's the way I kind of think of it, where the money, the difference between what you paid for it and what they're willing to pay you back for it, that's your rental cost for that amount of time. So those are the occasions where I kind of think about that. All right, let's see. Music seems very common between filmmakers. Music. You, Tom Buck, occasionally me. Not sure about others, but what comes straight to mind? Sorry. What are we talking about here? Music seems very common between filmmakers. Music. Do I have common music? Is that what you're saying? If you can expand on that, that would be great. Let me see. That's an interesting idea. I recommend using your smartphone as a card, keeping a photo with a QR code that leads to online presentation. Yep. The only thing with that is some people don't know how to use QR codes. You have to then teach them how to do it instead of just tapping it and it just shows up on their phone. Like, only Apple now has... Apple only has now introduced the QR code reader into their camera app recently. So, yeah, drummer, musicians. Oh, yeah. It's an artist thing like, that's why I'm attracted to this whole profession, because it's just been like, I draw, I paint, I take photos, I do video, I do music. I don't sing. Never had the voice for it. But yeah, it's like, it was just part of the package, where I was an art student, so like it all came down. Like, composition is the same between this, and then like even composition of music, the way you arrange stuff, like just the way you think about things is a little bit different. So it was very easy to get into that mindset, because it is about evoking emotions either through visuals or through sounds or with filmmaking. And that's why I love filmmaking. My ultimate dream is to direct a movie and get to the point where a composer is composing the music, and then just being there watching my story being told while the composer and the orchestra is playing the music. That's my dream. That's my North Star. That's what I want to get to. I want to get to that point where I'm there while they're recording the music live that was purposely written for the movie and the story that I made. That's my dream. That's where I want to get to. So, how do I get there? So, and when did you buy it? You bought the... So you said that it is... when did you buy it? Because if it's more than 2 years, that works out to about $100 a month rental. It's still doing it. Still able to do it. Hold on, let's see. What am I missing here? Okay. Why am I scared to upgrade? Because if you don't need it, then it's just a want. Don't be scared. But yeah. So ultimately it comes down to, ask yourself, have you put yourself into any positions where you've kind of trapped yourself because you're now paying for things that you're not taking full advantage of, or you're not committing to the long run of it? And if you have, then consider letting some of that stuff go. Consider finding a way to maybe up your income with every new client that comes in, to help you get out of those traps that you've built for yourself. Because ultimately, for me, that is what happened. I trapped myself into so many payments because I thought I needed some things, that it really just became no choice but to move forward and to find ways to up my income, to pay for the things that I've already done, and being okay with equipment that is 3-4 years old that still does its job. And I can still want all these new toys, but if I don't need them and it's not paying for, I won't be able to pay for it with work that's coming in, then it doesn't make any sense. And now it's about getting yourself out of that trap, digging yourself out. And it does come down to you, because if you're the one that put yourself there, it comes down to you to pull yourself out of those places. So sell stuff, raise your income, put money away, start building that whole empire that you know, and chase the thing that you actually want, because you know what you want. You truly know what you want. Go after it. But take the steps to correct the mistakes that you made in the past. No one's coming to save you except you. The most important person that is in your life that is going to help you out is you. Trust yourself. Be okay. Forgive yourself for dumb shit and dumb mistakes that you've done in the past. I'm speaking to myself as much as I'm speaking to you, because it's okay to make those dumb mistakes. That's the whole point of making them, is to learn from them. But don't make the same dumb mistake over and over again. And when you do put some money away, be okay with spending it on important things that come up. And the longer you can do it, the smaller amounts you'll be able to pull out that are actually huge amounts if you didn't do that in the past. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys have an amazing Thursday. I hope you guys had a fantastic new year, the beginning of the new year. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I love having these kind of chats with you guys, because I know that you understand what the hell I'm rambling about and what I'm chatting about. But I love it. I love it. I love these kind of chats. I will see you guys next Thursday, where we chat about something else. Hope you guys have a fantastic weekend. Happy Thursday. I hope you guys have a good time. And where's my stuff? There it is. I'll talk to you guys soon, all right? Bye for now.